All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the September meeting of the Save Our Indian River Lagoon Citizens Oversight Committee. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, play ball. The first thing we'll do is a roll call. Jackie?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Lorraine is absent. Charles Lugo.
Present.
Vinnie Toronto.
Here.
Don Dice is not currently here. John Windsor.
Here.
Terry Casto is not here. Bobby Putnam is not here. Laura Lee is not here. Stephanie Ely.
Here.
Kimberly Newton. Here. Todd is also not here. Kurt Smith.
Here.
And we have a quorum. The rest of the people are expected out.
Okay, thank you very much. The first thing is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the agenda passes. Next thing is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any committee discussion? Public discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. All right, progress and fiscal reports. Virginia, good morning.
Good morning. Okay. Got an exciting list this morning, starting with completion of a septic to sewer project in Satellite Beach, the Hedgecock, Grabowski, and DeSoto fields. So those bath houses associated with those ball fields are now connected to sewer. The leaky lateral repair count keeps increasing, so 419 of those 649 detected leaks have been repaired. 9 more quick connects to sewer. Also, Matt has been flooded with interest in that program, so another 250 applications in the last 2 months or so. They're really coming in at a quick clip now. Septic upgrades, 15 more reimbursements processed. Sykes Creek Phase 1 muck dredging the dredging part is complete. The dredge material management area restoration is going to take a little while, but 76,497 cubic yards were removed. UCF conducted another round of monthly oyster sampling. This time they were at McNabb Park in Cocoa Beach, and that project used multiple size classes of oysters and placed them on different materials. And so both size classes of oysters have grown larger in the gabions. And then on even though the population has decreased, which is, we often see that population decrease initially and before new recruitment. And then also on the prisms, the population has decreased since initial deployment, but it's still over the 100 per square yard that is our target. We completed Don Dice's My Lagoon Story, which you'll see later today, and working with MTN, we have a series of public service announcements on septic maintenance that you'll get to see. And I think I said last time we were working on a lot of grant applications, so we have submitted a lot of grant applications to the state for the $100 million Indian River Lagoon water quality funding and the other statewide water quality funding program, the resilience program, and it seems like there's another one. But so 21 septic to sewer funding requests, 14 muck removal requests, 4 mobile home park conversions from septic to sewer, 2 package plant conversions to central sewer, funding for another 200 homeowner quick connects to sewer, 100 homeowner septic upgrades, 2 innovative technologies, 1 water quality model, 1 resilience model, And then this week, I did a feasibility study request for removing sections of the causeway under 528 once DOT raises the road. Also, we have completed all of the responses to the auditors for the 2023 audit and answered all their questions. So we're just waiting for their report and expect you to have that in November. Matt Culver's removed another 6 derelict vessels. The South Central Sea Septic Sewer Project is nearly 93% complete. We were a day away from FP&L bringing power to the lift stations to be able to power those up and test everything. And the hurricane hit the other side of the state, and all the FP&L crews went elsewhere. So we're waiting for everybody to get power across the state and crews to get back to normal operations, and hoping that more storms don't hit our country and compete with our project. The Miko sewer line extension, that one is nearly 90% complete. So that one may actually get finished before South Central Sea. We'll see. We have 2 projects, septic sewer projects, that are now in the 100% design. Several more, they're going through different steps of the 75% design. We're also waiting on FP&L to install power lines for the Sykes Creek Zone N project, so they'll be in place before we construct the lift stations. Then oyster bars, Brevard Zoo is constructing another 4,700 square feet of oyster bars in the North Indian River Lagoon this month. TDC, we had a couple grants to produce those guides, the manatee guide and the recreation guide that we brought, I think it was last month, and we associated with those, we also had grants to put up signs at parks. So those are the 2 signs. They arrived, we have 33 of them. They arrived yesterday, and we are waiting for the legs and frames to arrive next week, and then those will get it installed around the county. And the DEP Innovative Technology Grant, thanks for those of you who attended the AECOM Algae Harvesting Demonstration Project. That project is now underway. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the agenda. And then in videos, we have a video on the AECOM algae harvesting, on septic to sewer quick connects, and Bobby Putnam's My Lagoon story has been filmed, so we're working on edits for that. Oh, there you are. Hi. Yes. All right. So on the back side, the September 21st, the Community Awareness for Merritt Island event, they are doing something called Bringing Back Our Blue Lagoon, and Brandon and a number of folks on the team are going to be presenting and working at that event. You're going to be there too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Vinny. And then reminding folks about the Marine Resources Council Low Impact Development Conference on October 19th and 20th. That conflicts with the Oversight Committee meeting, but for the public. Is that a raised hand? No, okay. And then in the month of September, there are lots of volunteer participation opportunities. Pretty much every day there's something that people can volunteer to do to help the lagoon. And that's my report.
All right, thank you very much. Charles?
Yeah, so Virginia, a couple questions. Going back to the oysters, although the number of individuals are down, do they also use biomass as an indicator of success?
Yes, we have the Habitat Suitability Index. We have a biomass indicator, a population indicator, and size class indicators.
Thanks.
So it's just, these are at 3 months and 1 month post-deployment, so we're not close to that biomass yet.
Got it. And one other question then, the grants that you submitted, the proposals, do you know the value of what we submitted?
I have not put it in a spreadsheet, but just ballpark, it's over 250 million.
Great.
All right. Kimberly, yes.
Virginia, could you repeat what you said about the 528 Causeway, the new piece that's going across? What did you say you're looking to do or trying to do, or what was that, please?
So, couple years ago, the committee voted, recommended raising the 528 Causeway sections of the road to low elevation span bridges so that the earthen causeway underneath could be removed to improve circulation in the northern part of the Banana River, right? The northern part of the Banana has some of the highest retention times in the lagoon and also has, as a result of that, some of the highest bloom intensity and duration. And so the thought is that circulation, improving circulation would help address those concerns. Port Canaveral and the National Estuary Program commissioned modeling by Dr. Gary Zerillo at Florida Tech that indicated that removal of sections of that causeway could significantly improve water clarity and reduce blooms in the northern Banana River. Based on that data, the county commission, the TP, the Transportation Planning Organization, the National Estuary Program, Port Canaveral, hopefully I'm not forgetting anybody, maybe the Economic Development Commission, all sent letters, and we met with Department of Transportation and asked in their plans to widen the road coming up in 2026, that they elevate it so that the causeway could be removed. So DOT has agreed to do that. They're planning on a design build in 2026 that would include redesigning sections elevated such that the causeway could be removed, not by DOT, but by us locally at a later date. So we've been working with the Army Corps of Engineers on a Section 206 federally authorized project to look at the feasibility of removing that causeway and what the benefits could be to the northern Banana River in terms of ecology. And we've been through a federal interest determination that was found to be positive. The next step is a feasibility study. So we got a proposal from them for approximately a $700,000 feasibility study. And so this grant application was to ask for state cost share for that feasibility study. And then if that feasibility study comes back favorable, the Section 206 program is funded every year by Congress, and this would provide up to $10 million of federal funds with no local cost share required for actually removing those, the portions of the causeway that the feasibility study found to be most impactful.
Thank you so much for the history and the thorough information, because as community outreach, there's a lot of community pushback about that whole redesign and tourism and all of the things that go along with that conversation. So to know that we're that far into this process of getting that possibly restored, that's excellent. Thank you for that.
Yes, Kurt.
Kudos. How many years have we been talking about this?
Yes, there's been a lot of work and a lot of agencies, a lot of political support, pushing for that to happen. So
I'm extremely excited to hear all that, because last time I heard anything, we were just in the process of trying to knock on doors and get somebody to pay attention to what we had to say. So, good job.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember at first they were like, well, maybe we'll think about it, but we're going to move the date of building to like 2042 or something like that. So, but I'm sure everybody came together. So thank you, Virginia, for you and the staff for leading on that. And also, it seemed like it was a really hot summer. That list that you guys went through of what we've accomplished, like that last month was crazy. So congratulations to you and the staff. And also, I think the citizens. I really think there's kind of a buzz going around, and people are jumping on board and calling Matt. Maybe they just want to talk to Matt. But But they've been calling him, so kudos to the staff and our community. I think people are getting on board, and that's awesome.
I did just remember one person that's been very important to moving that project along, Senator Mayfield.
Yes.
She helped us, get the meetings with DOT and express the importance of this project. So,
That's awesome.
I remember speaking to Jared Perdue probably 2 years ago about that.
yes, many conversations, yes.
Yes, Bobby?
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly, for asking, because I was quite curious about that, too. I didn't know all the background. That was, I'd like to see more of them done, but that's a different story. It's just quick, did I catch it right that Congress is going to be funding the feasibility study?
There's federal funding for 50% of the
50%.
feasibility study. We, as the local sponsor, would have to come up with the other 50%. So I put in an application asking the state to cost share with us for approximately 50% of the non-federal portion. And I'll be coming back to you, talking about how we can fund the non-federal, non-state portion of that feasibility study.
Which in essence would be a
Awesome.
quarter, correct? A quarter of the cost.
Was there multiple bids for that study? Or was there just one contractor that the county goes to? I don't know how that relationship logistically is set up.
So it will be an Army Corps feasibility study, and they will use their procurement process.
Okay, thank you. Perfect.
Great. All right, any other questions? I had just one more. Where are these signs going to be? And until the legs come, is Matt going to be holding them? And I keep picking on Matt, but he's gone in like a month or two. But no, where are the signs going to be placed? Do we know what parks?
Aaliyah has a list. I don't know that she knows them off the top of her head, but
Okay,
spread
cool.
around the county? Do you?
I love to do like some sort of scavenger hunt where you go and you take a selfie of yourself.
Geocache.
With them all or
That's a
something. Yeah.
great idea,
Yeah.
Vinny. That's
Thank you.
super
I
outreach
just,
marketing
you know.
right there.
Yeah, so different city parks are going to get them. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but Cape Canaveral, Titusville, Cocoa Beach, Cocoa, Palm Bay, Malabar, and Melbourne were cities that were willing to work with us to put some of the signs up in their parks. So they're going to be distributed across the county.
Okay, cool. Are they all lagoon parks or are there some that are further away?
It depends. So like the manatee signs are all going to be parks that are on the water somewhere. The Lagoon Rec Guide are the lagoon ones that they can vary. Some of them are
Awesome.
like in Malabar, they're more like the Malabar scrub habitat area.
I think that's great. Yeah, I didn't want, that was going to be my suggestion is to let's put them on as many parks as we can, not just keep them near the lagoon.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. All right, well, maybe once we get that list and they get put up, let us know, Virginia, and we'll go out and visit them. Keep them company and keep Matt company. All right. Thank you very much, Virginia. The next thing we'll do is the monthly revenue graph and financial statements. Molly?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we have our revenue graph. We received 4.4 million in collections for June, and so that puts us at 341 million. And
Logan, can you switch back?
Oh, he's on it in the TV in the middle, in front of the podium. is
Oh,
what he's
okay.
Showing.
oh, okay. And then for our monthly financial statement, we have 306 million assigned to revenues. And then for expenditures, we have 60 million assigned for projects, and then 18 million has been spent so far.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone have any questions for Molly?
I'm not sure if this is the exact right place to ask, but tax revenue is down in Orange County the last quarter. I haven't had an opportunity to look up Brevard. Are we down? I think Orange was like 17% or something. It was very significant for the last quarter.
For tourist tax? I'm not sure what the tourist tax is doing here locally, but the half-cent sales tax is right on target. So, in the graph, you see that the purple actual lines is right on top of our blue projection of what we would collect. So the last 2 years, we've seen with inflation and everything costing more, the tax collections were also more. So now that inflation is back down around 3%, we're seeing a slower acceleration in the collections, but they're still growing, right? Each, like this month's collection was slightly higher than the same month last year, and that's been true for most months of this.
It was like 170,000 above. So it was above this one.
170,000 above? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tourist tax is up, I don't
I do though, Kimberly, like you, I watch, we've got this straight line, which is the estimation, and then I see this dance with the actuals where we go above and below and above and below. But there is the altitude on each section of the line. And I do think we're going to end up hitting what we anticipated, hopefully.
Right. When we get those quarterly distributions, we catch up. So this was
Yeah.
a quarterly distribution month, so we caught up. So we'll probably fall behind the next 2 months, and then the last month of the fiscal year, we'll catch up and exceed our projection again.
Just no concerns at all then. That's good to know.
Correct.
Thanks.
Correct.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Virginia and Molly. So we'll move now into the other reports and special presentations section. Our first presentation will be by Holly Abeels, which is Florida's Horseshoe Crab Watch Program and spawning in Brevard. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me today and for inviting me to come speak to you about Florida's Horseshoe Crab Watch Program. I did bring some show and tell so you guys can see a horseshoe crab in case you haven't seen one before, so I'll pass this around. It's a molt, so it's not a horseshoe crab that was, it's not a dead one, it's one that's from a molt, from a horseshoe crab that grew bigger and needed to release its shell in order to continue to grow. So again, I'm Holly Abeels. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a Florida Sea Grant Extension Agent with University of Florida IFAS Extension. I'm here in Brevard County. I'm based in Cocoa, Florida. And this project is a statewide program I'll be talking about with a lot of partners, including University of Florida, Florida Sea Grants, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and the Nature Coast Biological Station, which helped start this program. So as you can see by the molt, horseshoe crabs are really strange creatures. So probably seeing one on the beach or in the water, you're probably wondering what exactly it is. They are arthropods, so they do have an exoskeleton made of chitin. They are not considered crustaceans, so they're not true crabs. So even though they have that name, they're actually more closely related to spiders and ticks and scorpions. So this is, for those of you that like the tree to see like where things are related to each other, you can see that millions and millions of years ago, horseshoe crabs kind of branched off from arachnids and kind of are in their own line. So they're very old, so they've been around since the Paleozoic. They haven't changed really in their shape or body size or body shape and what they look like for about 200 million years. So they've been around a really long time, and so they've survived a lot of mass extinctions. If you don't take anything else from this presentation besides this, I just want to emphasize that they're not dangerous. So a lot of people think because they have that tail and it looks sharp that they're going to sting them, kind of like what a stingray would do. But they actually use that tail to help right themselves. So you can see this picture on the right. These are crabs that are stranded if they come on shore to spawn. And so they use that tail to actually help to get themselves back over. So if you ever see a crab that is flipped over, I recommend helping it along to pick it up and move it back over so it's right side up, and just holding it by the sides of its carapace, so that larger part of it. Don't ever touch their tail. You can actually harm their tail because of that muscle that connects it to the body. But they're not going to hurt you, so they're perfectly safe, and actually they're really cool to see in the water and to check them out. So one of the cool things that horseshoe crabs do, and one of the reasons why we can have this project, is that they actually come up on the beach to nest and lay their eggs. So they usually come up in pairs. There's a couple pairs on this picture here. And they'll come up at high tide around the new and full moon, and here in Florida in the spring and in the fall. The females will lay their eggs in the sand, the males will fertilize it, and then they'll go back in the water, and they may come up on shore to do that a couple times, like within a season. So you could see some horseshoe crabs like this on the sand, or large masses of them like this. This is actually a picture from Parish Park up in Titusville. So because they do this, because they do come on shore to lay their eggs, it's a perfect opportunity for us to be able to study the population and the numbers and the frequencies of males versus females, sizes, and everything like that. And so it's a perfect way to have citizen scientists come on board and actually help to study and survey for these horseshoe crabs. So when we're doing surveys, this project sort of mimics successful surveys and tagging that the Mid-Atlantic region and the Northeast have been doing for many, many years. And so when we're doing surveys, we're actually trying to understand their movements, so where they're going from one place to another, how often they come back to the same beach, what are the conditions are when they do come on shore. So in our case, what's the wind and temperature of the water and the air. And maybe differences in population across where they're found. So they are found all the way from Maine down all the way here to Florida on the East Coast, through the Gulf of Mexico, ending around like Louisiana or so, and then you don't see them again until we get to the Yucatan Peninsula. And all this data goes here in Florida to FWC and then eventually to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They help to monitor tagging of horseshoe crabs. So Florida, like all states that have horseshoe crabs, do have to manage the population. And managing, in our case, is actually trying to determine what the population looks like. Because, like I said, they do have a wide distribution. Each of these kind of different groupings, so the Northeast area, Gulf of Maine, the Mid-Atlantic, the Southeast, Florida, and the Yucatan, they're all genetically distinct populations, so they're not necessarily mixing between each other. And so it's really important to know what each population is doing, how well it's faring, and whether or not the population is increasing or decreasing. And these are all of the various stakeholders that have a hand or are important in the management of the species. So horseshoe crabs, just like fish and other fish and shellfish that are commercially important, are important as far as having different types of commercial fisheries. So they are collected and used for bait. They're collected for the biomedical industry. Here in Florida, they're collected for the aquarium trade. And then ecologically, they're really important, not only for just being an important species in our ecosystems and our estuaries, but they're also really important for being able to provide food for other species. So one of those important species is the red knot, which is a bird that travels all the way from the southern tip of South America up to Delaware. And they stop off in Delaware at the time of year when horseshoe crabs are laying their eggs to actually eat the eggs of the horseshoe crab. Without that population of horseshoe crabs actually laying their eggs, the red knot wouldn't have anything to eat when it stops over, and it might not be able to continue its migration to the northern part of North America. So because of this, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission does have a fishery management plan for horseshoe crabs, and so FWC has to follow that plan and help to provide information about the population of horseshoe crabs here in Florida. This is what we know right now as far as what the population sort of looks like across their regions. So New England and New York, there's evidence of declines. In Delaware Bay and in the southeast being Georgia and like South Carolina, fairly stable, maybe with some increases. And Florida has a sort of an unknown population. This is why this project came about, because we weren't really sure what the population looked like and where kind of all these genetically distinct populations looked like across our region. And here in Florida, we do have about 5 or 6 genetically distinct populations, which means that even though we have a large state with these different populations, each population could be vulnerable to extinction if their numbers do decline because they're not necessarily mixing with each other. And just like a lot of marine organisms, they have a lot of threats. So these are just a couple of the ones that I wanted to point out for here in Florida. Development, so they do use that shoreline in order to come up on the beach to lay their eggs. So if we have more development along our beaches or have seawalls or riprap or shoreline armoring, they can't come on shore in order to lay their eggs. But also things like the aquarium trade in Florida, erosion, shoreline erosion, sea level rise are all threats, and these are threats to a lot of different species that we have in our ecosystems. So back in 2015, in conjunction with FWC, the University of Florida Biology Department, University of Florida IFAS Extension, and the Nature Coast Biological Station, this citizen science project started. So they started in Cedar Key knowing that there was a good population of horseshoe crabs there, and there had been a researcher at University of Florida who'd been studying the population for a long period of time. So it was a perfect place to kind of start this project and figure out what a surveying method would look like here in Florida compared to surveying in other parts of the United States where they do these surveys. So they determined the survey method and what citizen science would collect, and since then they've been expanding this project across Florida. And if you want to learn more about this particular project and using citizen science here in Florida for this, there is this journal article that was released a couple years ago where you can learn more about this particular project and the use of citizen science to track these population trends. So anyone can become a citizen scientist. So that's the great thing about this project is really all you have to do is come to a training and learn about what it is that you'll be doing, practice those skills, and then go out and do surveys. I usually around this time of year is when I start recruiting new volunteers. So at the very end of this presentation is my email. So please email me if you're interested in participating. Always looking for new volunteers. I have a great slew of many volunteers who are really involved in this project, but I'm always looking for new people to come on board and learn more about the species and about going out and helping to provide data. That's really important for understanding the population of horseshoe crabs. These are all the locations within Florida where you can do surveying. And so Brevard County is one of those. But you could also do Volusia, and Jessie Wells, who's in the back, I saw her before. She helped start the project with the Marine Discovery Center in Volusia County, so she can tell you more about that. And then Florida Department of Environmental Protection helps to monitor horseshoe crabs in the Indian River County, St. Lucie County, and Martin County as well. So there's 3 main things that volunteers do. They do a beach nesting survey, so they actually walk a known length of beach, and they mark how many males and females and pairs of horseshoe crabs that they see along that transect. We tag horseshoe crabs, so the reason to tag is to see how many we see back at a later date in the hopes that we can determine what that population size looks like, so it's a mark recapture type of tagging. And then we look to see if we see any tagged horseshoe crabs come back on the beach. So we're always looking for tags on horseshoe crabs. And often you're interacting with the public or distributing information because people are wondering why you're standing outside with a clipboard, counting horseshoe crabs. So it's very important to be able to have the knowledge to be able to talk to the public. And education is important, right? So the more people that know about these animals and what it is that we're doing. So this is the website from FWC to learn more about the project itself. If you just Google Florida Horseshoe Crab Watch, FWC, you'll get to this website. And they have reports on here from, I think the first report is from 2016 all the way through 2022, so you can see sort of what the population has looked like across the state. In that time, 2023, we're starting the fall season of surveying, so 2023 won't come out until early next year. But I thought I would show you what some of that data looks like from 2022. So this is a plot that shows the average size of females and males across the various counties that the surveying is done. So Brevard is right at the very first column here, so you can kind of see how we compare to other parts of the state. I do want to briefly point out Nassau County, which is the county that's right at the Georgia border. And they tend to have larger animals because Georgia, and as you move north in the United States, animals get bigger in general, and so do horseshoe crabs. So Georgia crabs are much larger than our crabs. And so they tend to kind of have a mix of that sort of population, and that's why their crabs are usually bigger. We also measure the width of horseshoe crabs. So last one was the weight. This is the width, so like the actual size of the horseshoe crabs. So you can see what this looks like across the state. And again, all of our data is compiled individually by county, but also it's compared across the state, so we can kind of have a larger idea of what everything looks like in the state as well. And then this is the numbers of horseshoe crabs that were counted in 2022. So there were 608 unique sampling events across 38 sites in Florida. We counted over 32,000 crabs, with 2,000 of those being tagged, and had 114 crabs recited. So as you can see, the number of crabs recited is fairly low. I think it's usually between 8 and 10% of the crabs that are tagged. And that can mean a lot of different things, whether or not crabs are lost, or maybe they're taking a couple years in between nesting, or maybe they're just moving to different areas where we're not seeing them again. So there's a lot of different reasons for that. And Brevard County, we're very lucky in that we count the most crabs than any other county in the state. So in 2022, we counted over 23,000 crabs. In the spring, and we only survey in the spring. Other parts of the state survey in the fall. And so in the fall, Pasco County would have been the county that counted the most crabs, which was just under 1,000. And that's what that graph basically depicts. As you can see, Brevard County is sort of off the charts. And so they have to make a smaller chart and a bigger chart for us. We are really lucky in Brevard that we have so many crabs. Parish Park is where we see the most crabs in Brevard County. And so when they are surveying and when they are coming on shore to nest, it's a really good time to go out and actually see large masses of horseshoe crabs coming up on the beaches. And we do the most surveys as well, because we not only survey during the new and full moon, but we also survey during wind events, which could be a whole other presentation as to why we do that. And then Levy County, which is the Cedar Key area, also has a lot of surveys that they do as well. This project could not be possible without volunteers, so you can see just the amount of volunteers that are involved in this project. In Brevard County, we have about 45, 43 volunteers, and certainly could use more because we have a lot of dates that we go out and survey, and so we always need people to come on board and just be part of the project. We don't survey in the fall because we don't see the large number of horseshoe crabs that come on to nest in our part of of Florida. So other counties do see horseshoe crabs that come up in large numbers in the fall. We just don't see that here, so that's why we only do it in the spring.
I'm curious, why do the different crabs not mix? Is it because they just don't migrate much?
Yeah, I think they're usually fairly home kind of bound, so they don't usually travel more than, say, I think the longest stretch of like tagging a horseshoe crab and then resighting it somewhere else that we've seen is like 50 miles. So they're not really traveling very, very far. And you can imagine, at least in our Indian River Lagoon, there's probably just different pockets of areas where they're going and they're not necessarily going long distances. So yeah, they're kind of home buddies, so they kind of stay in their area, and so that's why we have those distinct
Yeah, I just kind of
populations.
figured they're not really mobile.
Yeah. I mean, they're a, fairly small animal compared to other animals, right? So they're, just going to be, as long as there's food and, a great place to come up and on shore to lay their eggs, then they're going to stay in an area for.
The other question I have from what you were talking about the Northeast is declining in the crab population, or horseshoe crab. Do we have any reason why?
I'd have to look, I'm not sure, but it could be things that are similar here, like development or loss of shoreline. It could be because of the industries like the bait industry, like taking more horseshoe crabs. It could be a lot of different things related to that, but I'd have to look to see like what exactly would be the reason for that particular area.
Yeah, I was just curious because that's where I'm from, and I know that I knew an awful lot of people that were in the fishing business up there, and that's what they did with horseshoe crabs.
Yeah.
They cut them up and used them as bait. So I was just wondering if that could be because of that could cause some of the decline.
Yeah, and I have to look again, like I said, to their data as to what their,
Okay, just
why they decline.
curious.
But that's probably a mixture of a lot of those different reasons.
And the other question I had, you mentioned that animals, et cetera, get larger as you go north. Is there a reason for that? Because I know like deer, for example,
Yeah,
are
it's-
greatly different in the Northeast in size.
Deer, they're little deer.
Yeah, it's sort of like a,
Yeah, it's as low south as you get, little deer.
yeah, it's a principle in ecology, so I think it's just based on, Brandon probably knows this more than I do because he used to help teach, but it's based on things like food, different times of year when you have food available, other things like that.
Yeah, some of it's the temperature too, so, you know, a larger body mass will retain heat
More
better.
heat, yeah.
So down here, you don't need that to stay warm in the winter, so you can have a smaller body size, and then your food requirements aren't as high.
So it's nature adapting to
Yeah.
the, just like fruit down here has thick skins versus fruit up north has thinner skins.
Yeah, exactly, adapting to your environment and what works best for you to be able to survive, yep. But you're right, like same with deer, Key West deer versus deer in like Minnesota. Same deer species, very different size differences, so. Yeah, Charlie?
Yeah, hi, Holly. Thanks for your wonderful presentation. And first, just a comment, you know, our colleague Lori Thompson is a big advocate with
And there's
the
a picture of her, I kind of had to sneak her in on this presentation.
her.
So there she is, and she's
Yes.
really our main,
Yeah.
like I rely on her so much to help with our surveying in Parish Park. She like organized, of course, you all know how amazing she is. So she organizes all the volunteers, she like makes sure people are out checking to see if horseshoe crabs are nesting, you know, she's, I rely on her a lot, so.
Yeah, I was going to say she probably counted 20,000 of the 23,000 plus
Probably.
in our county. You had mentioned too about some of the issues and population, you know, things that are affecting their population negatively. Armoring shorelines is a big part, I believe, and most of our lagoon, and I don't know the exact number, is armored. Is there any prohibition for new armoring or for re-armoring shorelines that have to take into account the horseshoe crab?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, did you? Yeah,
I think
Holly,
this
you
is
did-
my last slide, besides the next slide, which has my email, but
Yeah.
basically just pointing out citizen science is powerful, you know,
Thank you, Kimberly.
they do a lot of things, they basically do this project, so there's coordinators in every county, but they're the ones who are doing all the work, so, and citizen science has been proven in a lot of different ways to help provide good data for management of species. So this is my email, if anyone wants to become a volunteer. I hope to hear from all of you in this room to become volunteers. You can volunteer on the weekends too, it's not just during the day, so.
Awesome. All right, Kimberly, yes, please.
Thank you, Holly.
Yeah.
I actually did this training several years ago
Yes.
with a few of my kids, and they were in high school at the time. It was very thorough and extremely interesting, and covered a lot of science outside of just the horseshoe crab itself with habitat. But I'm curious, from this time, these last few years, have you made any progress in regulations for harvesting, specifically with biomedical industry, or are we still data collection period?
Yeah, we don't collect them for biomedical here in Florida, but there are other states that do. And very recently, there has been some laws put into place for harvesting of those and either reducing harvesting or there is also a synthetic version of that same chemical that we're taking from, or enzyme we're taking from horseshoe crabs. So there has been some more movement into trying to get that synthetic version approved so you wouldn't necessarily have to take horseshoe crabs for the biomedical industry.
In Florida specifically, are we having any progress with harvesting regulations, numbers, counts?
Yeah,
for
there
anything?
is. And I'm sorry, I don't remember, I don't know off the top of my head, but FWC came out a couple years ago or, with the new regulations for like how many you can take. I'd have to look up what the numbers are, but.
I would have to guess a lot of your influence from the study had to play a part in that conversation, at least?
Yeah, I'm sure, because FWC does have that research arm, so more than likely the arm that does like the regulations is probably looking at this data and looking at the numbers. I'm sure there's also pushes from, environmental groups saying how important they are, and that's oftentimes how things kind of get started in the conversation and try to move forward. So I'm sure all of those are tied into those new regulations that might be coming into place. So.
All right, anybody else? Bobby, yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask how much of that was Laura Lee, which she does. She would love to be here, but she also really loves her fishery council that she's in Charleston for right now. And so I know she would want to bring up the differences in what's going on in the Mosquito Lagoon versus south, because the seagrass and everything else is just booming up there. And she actually sent me some pictures this week from the Hollover Canal area, and it was better than what it looked like down here when I was a kid. Like, what is going on? Like, and so I was kind of curious. I got maybe two quick things. Are you seeing or documenting and noticing a difference? Because Brevard is so big. So you see our numbers, it's like, yeah, but we got like 80 miles of, and it's like 3 tiers of 80 miles. So you could like triple that practically, right? Because, you get the Banana Lagoon, Mosquito Lagoon, Indian River Lagoon is really in almost 2 divisions. Are you seeing differences besides like Laura Lee's influence in the parish area? And what is the primary diet for them? Because and I'll just one more quick thing and I'll let you, I barely see them anymore in the south, and we used to see them all the time. I was really hoping in my video that one would come by, because when I went the week before to double check the site, one did, and I hadn't seen but one other the entire year. So that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, they feed, they're benthic, they live on the bottom, so they're feeding on things that are in the benthos, so like worms, shellfish and stuff like that. Kind of that detritus that's in the sediment. I guess we're unique, at least in Brevard, because, and across really the Indian River Lagoon area, the first year we did this project, we actually, even though in Volusia County I've been doing it for several years, I had asked FWC, because we weren't really sure when horseshoe crabs were coming on shore to nest. I had asked them if I could send out volunteers every day during the season, which is not what happens. So usually they go out at new and full moon, and they go out like a couple days before and after, because they know that's when horseshoe crabs come on shore. But I wanted to get a better idea of why we see them not normally at the new and full moon. So FWC had agreed to that. So as long as there is a strict protocol for collecting data. So we have to make sure we're always following that protocol. And so using that data, using that information, we determined that there's a particular wind speed for a certain length of time going onshore or onto the beach when horseshoe crabs come up, because they want to nest at the very highest kind of like water line. So that's why they come up at the new and full moon at the high tide. Because they don't want their eggs to become too dry, but they don't want them to be waterlogged, right? So that's kind of like that sweet spot. And there is going to be a paper hopefully coming out. Berlina, who's the FWC coordinator, and myself and a couple other FWC people wrote a paper about that particular studying of going out every day and kind of determining when horseshoe crabs come. So we do more surveys here in Brevard, because we go out at the new and full moon like everyone else does, but we also go out on those wind surveys. So that's why we tend to see larger numbers, one, because we're catching them when they're coming up on shore, because we're different, because, of course, the Indian River Lagoon has to be different. And so that sort of just helps us to be able to kind of catch them when have those large numbers when they are coming up. And Laura Lee has seen them, obviously, for long periods of time, coming up at Parish Park. FWC collects data from anyone. If you see a horseshoe crab, you can report that to FWC. And so that was kind of the first level of them collecting data about horseshoe crabs, but they really needed, that's sort of sporadic, right? It's like relying on people to see them and then to know that they can report it. So using that, it kind of helped us to determine which sites we should go to because they would be more sightings of them. And so we knew Parish Park already, had large numbers because of that and because of Laura Lee. So, our other site is Kelly Park, which is on Merritt Island. And so same thing there. They're going at the new and full moon. When we see a wind event, that's going to be hopefully favorable for horseshoe crab surveying. I have volunteers who go out and survey, in the hope that we actually see horseshoe crabs. It's not always a complete science. Sometimes we think it's a great time, great amount of wind, great the wind going on shore, and sometimes they don't show up for some reason. So unfortunately, we have to kind of play and kind of think about the conditions that are happening, making sure volunteers are safe, as well, if it's a big storm that's coming through, in order to catch our horseshoe crabs. So I think that answers your question, Bobby.
Yes, and it kind of reminds me of shrimping.
Okay, yes,
It's
yep,
Relying on the tides and winds.
yep.
Any other questions? I just had three comments. One of them, is there a spot in the southern Brevard part of the lagoon, central Indian River Lagoon, for sightings? I know you mentioned one in Paris, one in Merritt Island. Because somebody in the south might want to go against Laura Lee, and we could have like a horseshoe sighting competition. That would be kind of fun.
That would be really cool,
Yeah.
yeah. I know I had talked once with MRC, potentially, like having that be a site, and it's finding like a good site where we know we've seen horseshoe crabs, having, volunteers to kind of man that site. So it's just providing that coordination. So if someone, is really knowledgeable about an area and it says, yes, we see a lot of horseshoe crabs here, we could potentially have a site, here in southern Brevard, certainly. I feel like there's just a lot more obstructions for getting to the water in the south, so that could be one of the limitations, because we have to be able to go from shore.
Yeah.
So there has to be able to be a place for people to park and then go and reach the beach, so.
Okay. Then two other things, I know like Kurt said, I think if we had like multiple areas in the north that you said were in decline, and then there's multiple areas in the south that were in, increase. I just think looking at the trends would be really cool. Like you said, development or temperature, water temperature change. I think that'd be really interesting to see if they could find a reason. My last comment was, is there any attempts at building or innovating something that you could attach onto like a hardened seawall to have like a laying area for the horseshoe crabs? Like, Cocoa Beach and Kelsey Mac, they're doing their hanging potter boxes that has mangroves that you can hang off a hardened seawall. I didn't know if there was like a ramp people with hardened seawall could, attach to it or something to provide. Is there anything that Holly, of anybody doing that?
No, I'm not
Okay.
sure, so.
I just think it would be, like, I understand if you've got to redo your whole seawall, it's a lot of money.
Right.
As opposed to like, well, let me just screw this ramp in along the hardened seawall to provide, I thought that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sand.
Yes, yeah, you want sand in a
Yeah.
good area where water does lap up, and recedes and stuff like that. But yeah, that's a good question, I'm not sure.
Okay, entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah.
I have
And
one more
and I do want to just point out, like, one of the reasons why we're doing these surveys and why we sort of continue, obviously, to do them every year is that long-term trend, like you said, Vinny. So we need that long-term data in order to see what the population looks like. And, really, this project just, in Florida started in 2015. We started surveying in 2019. So we're still kind of young in that, looking at trends.
Well, and the data you've been able to collect in those, 4 years, and the structure is awesome. So thank you,
Yeah.
Holly, for all your work.
It's the volunteers. Really, all I do is mobilize, and they do all the work. So I cannot be done without them, so.
Thank you, volunteers. Kimberly, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, you said several mass extinctions that the horseshoe crab has survived historically. Is that more concern, kind of canary in a coal mine for the northern areas that are losing numbers, or are they just still evaluating what they've found? Like, I don't know how long the northern states have been doing the project to see.
Yeah, I don't know how long they've been doing these types of surveys. Obviously, much longer than Florida has, so where they can kind of see those trends. And yeah, I feel like, a lot of, there's a lot of just threats that are just in general for a lot of species. And of course, unfortunately, humans don't always help that. So, I feel, I don't know if necessarily it's the same as like past mass extinctions. It's really more of just like all of the things we've been doing to our environment, or changes we've been making, or areas where maybe they can't potentially survive where they used to before, or numbers have been going down. So there's just so many different. Yeah, loss of nesting habitats.
Thank you so much again.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Holly, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay, so we will move on to our next agenda item, which is a presentation by Lauren Hall, Seagrass Monitoring Update for the IRL.
Hello, I'm Lauren Hall. I work with the coastal section of the St. Johns River Water Management District, and thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to share with you our most recent seagrass monitoring as recently as this summer. This is an outline of what I'm going to cover today. First, I just want to talk a little bit about the challenge that we're facing in the lagoon, how we monitor our seagrasses with the Water Management District, some of the recovery that you have all been reading and hearing about, and then what are some of the possible drivers that are impacting the seagrasses out there right now and maybe driving some of that recovery, or areas that we haven't seen recovery. And then I want to touch a little bit on recruitment of seagrass. So the first thing I want to do, though, is we have heard over the years and talked a lot about all the losses that we've had in the Indian River Lagoon on seagrasses, but this has really been a phenomenon that's been going on worldwide. This is some data from Dunick et al., and what they're showing here is that all 7 bioregions have shown declines, have been on a trajectory of decline. And we're at about a 20% net loss for global seagrasses. So this is not a problem that is just affecting us. This is in estuaries worldwide. So bringing it to the Florida estuaries, before we get into the lagoon, again, this is not just a problem that we're facing in the lagoon. Other areas throughout Florida are seeing the same kind of issues. After the really large increase and a lot of success that they saw in Tampa Bay, since 2016, they actually have seen a 30% loss in their seagrass. It does depend on which area in Tampa Bay you're in, but they are seeing losses as well. Shifting a little bit further south down to Sarasota Bay, they have also seen about a 26% loss in their seagrasses since 2016. This figure that I show here goes through 2020. If I put the 2022 bar on there, it's about almost 600 acres less than what I'm showing here. And then going even further south, if we hit down by Florida Bay, they saw a pretty dramatic decline in their thalassia beds in 2015. And so all the areas that you're seeing that have the orange shading there is where they went from continuous seagrass to patchy seagrass, and the areas that are shaded in red is where they went from continuous seagrass to bare seagrass. Now, what's impacting these areas is not always the same thing. So in Tampa Bay, Sarasota Bay, those areas were more impacted by algal blooms, whether that be phytoplankton, the microalgae, or macroalgae blooms. Down in Florida Bay, we're looking at more of a hypersalinity and warm summer temperature issue. So it's not always the same thing that is affecting seagrasses, but we are seeing losses throughout the state. Okay, so now bringing it really local here to the lagoon. First, I want to just touch on how we monitor seagrasses at the Water Management District. We take a 2-tiered approach. So we have our large-scale mapping project, which is photo-interpreted grass beds that are done from aerial photography with the help of ground truthing. And that's done every 2 years, and it's done lagoon-wide. And from that, we're able to get a really big picture look at what our seagrass beds are looking like. At the smaller scale, for our second tier, we have our in-water seagrass transects, and those are done twice a year in summer and in winter. And the way we do that is by running a line from shore out to the deep edge of the grass bed, and then every 5 to 10 meters along that line, we lay down a quadrat like what you see here in this photo, and we take a variety of parameters. And these really are focused on the parameters that you can't see from that large-scale mapping. So we're looking at what species we have present, what is the actual percent cover, are the seagrasses covered in epiphytes? Do we have a lot of algal cover? So things that we can't see from an aerial photo is what we want to see when we're doing our in-water surveys. In addition to those 2 tiers of seagrass monitoring, we also do routine monthly water quality monitoring so that we can try to figure out what is driving some of the changes that we're seeing in our seagrass trends. And those water quality sites are focused on nutrients, so nitrogen and phosphorus, and then which can, of course, cause a lot of our algal blooms or exacerbate our algal blooms. And then we also focus on the other things that are affecting light, which impacts seagrass dramatically. And that would be things like color, turbidity, total suspended solids, that type of information. Okay, so just getting into a little bit of our data now. This is from our mapping analysis. Again, that first tier big picture. I have up here the 2009 and then our most recent seagrass map, which was 2021. And you can see with the green shading, the continuous seagrass has had a very large decline throughout most of the lagoon. And really the areas that you're seeing the remaining seagrass are up in the Mosquito Lagoon, especially on the eastern shore of Mosquito Lagoon, and then down by Sebastian and south to Vero. Very large losses throughout the rest of the lagoon and in Banana River. Now, we do have a 2023 map that is being worked on right now, but that won't be ready until spring, so that's why I'm just sharing the 2021 with you here. For the bar chart that you see, that's looking at the extent in hectares, and you can see that in 2021 we were down to about 8,000 hectares, which is down from over 30,000 hectares in our 2007 and 2009 maps. Okay, so again, the bars are in hectares from our aerial photography, and now I'm throwing in our seagrass transect data through, and you can see time across the bottom, and this is through 2022. So our aerial extent in green, and then I'm adding in the mean transect length, which is our black line. And the mean transect length is how far from the shore to that deep edge, how far does that transect extend? Because we will take it, if the grass grows out, we'll take it further. If it contracts, we'll contract that transect. So that change in length is really another indication of the footprint of seagrass, similar to our acreage, our coverage and acreage. And so those are going to track each other pretty well. And what's great about having that transect length information is that on the non-mapping years, we have a way to fill in those gaps. So if we take, say, 2011, for example, where we see the large decline in our extent, what we can tell from our transect data and that length data is that it truly happened in 2011, not 2010, because that black line is still up high in 2010. So it gives us a little bit more detail on when the declines are happening. Then in the gray line here is our seagrass percent cover, and you can see that we've also seen a loss in that from about 20% all the way down to about 2%. In 2022, there's a slight uptick in both our transect length and our cover, but it's almost barely noticeable. Now I want, hot off the press, here's our 2023 data, and you can see we have had a transect length increase. It's back to about what we had in 2019. But that transect percent cover is still really slight. It's a little bit of an uptick, but really not anything substantial. This is not the same story everywhere. And so just to give you an idea of how the different regions of the lagoon might be different, you know, as we were talking about before with the horseshoe crabs, we have a very different lagoon in the northern part of the lagoon and the southern part of the lagoon. And so what I really wanted to just illustrate here is that the hectares of seagrass in 2009 really could be quite different from reach to reach. In 2021, you can see that the losses were we had major losses in reaches 2 and reach 4, but really we were seeing losses in all of those reaches. But just to give you an idea of where we had the most substantial losses or where we still have seagrass remaining, which is focused up in that reach 1, a little bit in reach 2, but much less than what we did have. Okay, so now let's get into the on the ground. What does it look like in the water? So this is our summer 2023 cover that was taken from 300 points that I surveyed in support of our seagrass mapping. So we go out there, we do in-water surveys right after they fly those aerials so that they can use that data to tell me how accurate those maps are at the end. So this is for some of those surveys, and what you can see pretty quickly is that Mosquito Lagoon is really taking the lead here and has some really impressive numbers. We're seeing up to 100% cover of seagrass up in Mosquito Lagoon, and it's been absolutely gorgeous grass beds like what we were seeing back in 2009 and 2007. If you shift over to a little bit further west, over into the northern IRL, south of Haulover Canal along that eastern shore, we're seeing some pretty good recovery, but the rest of that northern area is not really seeing the same thing. So it really is very site-specific over there. Coming down to Banana River, in the northern part of Banana River, I have to tell you, I was absolutely shocked when I got out there because this was an area that just had not seen hardly a sprig of grass in a really long time. All we were seeing out there was Caulerpa prolifera, which is a rhizophytic macroalgae. A lot of people mistake it for seagrass if they don't know the difference between seagrass and the macroalgae. It looks a lot like seagrass, but it's not. It's an algae. And so what we were seeing in there is just dense beds of Caulerpa, but very little seagrass. Well, this summer, I saw up to 35% cover of haliduli and rupia mixed within that Caulerpa. So it was a great surprise, really happy to see that. But as I move further south in Banana River, I'm really not seeing that same kind of recovery, really less than 1% cover of seagrass and really substantially Caulerpa. Going over to the IRL side, again, very little, no seagrass recovery, but just, again, a lot of Caulerpa present. As we move further south, we're seeing a range, 10 to 70% cover depending on where you are. All right, so just diving a little bit deeper into some of the changes that we're seeing. First, I want to start with our big success story, Biolab area, southern Mosquito Lagoon. So this is just north of the Biolab boat ramp, and the figure that I'm showing here is mean seagrass percent cover. And that's from 2009 to 2023. And everyone can see huge increase in 2023. Just in a single year, the increase at that transect has been unbelievable. And so we're back to what we were seeing in 2013, 2012, before we started to have those declines in southern Mosquito Lagoon. So really exciting stuff. And this is a photo from this summer of how dense that grass bed is. I actually just heard from a fisherman up there that was saying, the grass is too dense up here. Yeah. And I went, too dense? I haven't heard that in a long time. So then shifting over to the IRL side, I mentioned that we were seeing some recovery south of Haulover Canal on that eastern shore. These are the kind of numbers we're getting out there. We went from 1% cover in 2022 up to almost 23% cover at that particular transect. But again, a lot of the other sites in the northern lagoon are not seeing that kind of recovery, really site-specific there. Coming down to Banana River, now this figure is showing mean Caulerpa cover, not seagrass. If I tried to put seagrass on the chart, you wouldn't even see it. So we're seeing, again, just a Caulerpa prolifera story, and there's a photo of the Caulerpa right there. So again, not seagrass recovering up in this area as much, but Caulerpa's going strong. Over in the IRL side, same story. A lot of Caulerpa. This is in the Melbourne area, and so again, just beautiful, dense beds of Caulerpa prolifera. Okay, so what might be driving these changes? So this is some water clarity data. These are SECI depths in May, July, and then just a couple of weeks ago in September. And the dark and light blues are showing you the clearest water, how far that SECI is penetrating into the water. And you can see that leading into the summer growing season in May, throughout the growing season in July, and then even when we started getting more of our storms and more higher rainfall, we're still seeing really good water clarity throughout the whole area. So water clarity is a big driver in a lot of these changes that we're seeing. So then the next question might be, okay, well, we're seeing good water clarity everywhere. Why aren't we seeing seagrass recovery everywhere? Why are we only seeing it up in Mosquito Lagoon? And I think what we're looking at there is more of a recruitment question, and it could be also a sediment question. And so just to kind of touch on some of the recruitment side of things, seagrass can recruit by a couple of means. Fragments is one of them. Storms or bioturbation could uproot fragments. Those fragments can drift around, settle in another location, root, and start to form a new patch. We know it can do this, but things really have to be just right for this to happen. First of all, you have to have seagrass present in an area to be able to uproot and drift to somewhere else. Then it has to drift to a location and settle in a location that is good for it to expand and grow. The water clarity conditions have to be right, the depth has to be right. So everything kind of has to come together for that to really work out. We know that from some research that I did back in the early 2000s that Haliduli radii can survive for up to a week just drifting around before it has to settle in root and form a new patch. But again, everything has to work out just right. If it just gets pushed up on shore like this photo I have from Laura Lee, well, that's not going to have much success. So a lot has to come together. And the other method is going to be sexual reproduction or reproduction from seeds. We have a lot of questions about seed reproduction and what's going on out there right now with seeds. So at this point, we don't know a lot about the distribution of our seed banks. Do we have seed banks out there? Do we have seed banks of multiple seagrass species? What triggers flowering and production of seeds? What's triggering germination? What's preventing germination? There are a lot of things about this that we don't know right now. I had an intern this summer that started on that first question, do we even have a seed bank out there? She surveyed 13 sites this summer, and these are some of the results from her survey. So it was actually pretty promising. We saw rupia seeds at all except for one of her sites up in the northernmost part of Mosquito Lagoon. Haliduli seeds, they were scarce, we only saw them at 2 sites, but they were present. And so that was still exciting. And if you look at the 2 spots, the 2 green dots for the Haliduli figure there, you can see that those are the 2 areas where we've seen the biggest seagrass recovery, and that's where we were finding our Haliduli seeds. So that was pretty exciting. Again, we still have a lot that we want to try to figure out about this. We're looking to expand this project over the next several months. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. And really what I'm hoping that this seed information can also help with, aside from just giving us the information that we want to have, is help in some of the guidance on where we should focus some of the restoration projects. If we have an area that has a really large seed bank already, that might not be an area that we should go out and do some plantings in. If it's able to recover on its own, then maybe we don't need to focus on that spot and focus our time and money on that location. So that's some of the information that I'm hoping to gain from this. Okay, so I told you some positive stuff, so it's exciting, but what I really want to point out here is that in 2021, I do expect to see an increase in this bar this year. I do expect to see a little bit of an uptick in our acreage and our hectares, but we're still going to be a long way away from 2007 and 2009. If I use the 2013 and 2015 bars as an example of a rate of recovery, it can still take up to 22 years for seagrass to get back to that 2007-2009 coverage. And so, yes, we're seeing some positive things, and I'm really excited to see that, but we still have a long way to go. Our work's not done. In summary, yes, we've seen recent recovery, but it's very site-specific. Some areas we're not seeing any. We need a lot more information on seed banks and natural recruitment. But whether or not we have a plethora of seeds and fragments out there, if the water quality conditions aren't there, it's not going to matter. They're not going to survive. So we still have to keep focusing on that reduction of nutrients. That remains the key to maintaining that good water clarity and to seagrass coming back. And I'm not talking just about stormwater and septic and fertilizer. Yes, those are important, but we also have to keep in mind that internal recycling of nutrients is another thing that we have to make sure we're incorporating. This is an and problem, not an or problem. And so we have to make sure we're taking all of those things into account. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Questions, Charles?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Wonderful presentation. For areas that we've done dredging, and I know it's still early in the program, and it doesn't appear there's been any recovery of seagrass in those dredged areas. And I don't know if the dredged area isn't suitable, doesn't have a sandy bottom, but maybe it's more of a clay or something. But any thoughts about that?
So I think a lot of our dredging is focused more where we have these big muck deposits, which are not necessarily going to be areas where we had our persistent seagrass beds in the past. Really, that's to remove those nutrients that they can't make their way back into the lagoon that can exacerbate those phytoplankton blooms. volumes. So I don't expect to see seagrass coming into those dredged areas, but I do hope that when recruitment maybe is not holding us back, I do hope we'll see seagrass in the surrounding areas where the depth and the sediment conditions are suitable.
All right. Any other questions? Bobby?
Well, I'm going to agree with Laura Lee, who's not here. Salinity, are you seeing any measurable differences that might be? Because I know the banana, up there, the Mosquito Lagoon, they got, 2 years in a row? Got a big salt intrusion with the storms over the banks?
Yes.
Yeah.
So salinity can certainly be an issue, but we have seen seagrass surviving in lower salinities for many, many years. I really think light is more likely going to be the limiting factor with seagrass as far as seagrass's ability to thrive in within those conditions. But what I don't know about salinity is how that might influence seed production and seed germination. And so that's something that I'd like to really look into more. So it could be that some of these areas where we're not seeing recovery, my intern was finding seeds everywhere, including low salinity areas. But are those low salinities maybe limiting the germination of those seeds? And so that's something else that we want to look at, is really what's driving some of the viability of seeds and some of the germination rates. Sure.
Great. Any other questions? All right. I just had a comment. I love all the mapping data that we're able to collect, Virginia. We've got seagrass mapping data. We've got algae mapping data. We've got project mapping data. There seems to be so much a collection of data that is there an opportunity for, I know all the agencies work together, but to share that, information, I think it's great to be able to lend it to one and the other.
Yes, and we do. Actually, a lot of so some of the mapping data fed into what I call a persistence map. So areas of the lagoon that we have seen the longest lasting seagrass beds, which fed into some of the work that Brevard County was doing with Mark Fonseca and his group. So yeah, we share the data readily. I love sending my data out. We have the mapping data is available on our website, so you can access that easily. The transect data we don't have on the website because there's a lot of more nitpicky stuff that Lori and I really, Lori Morris and I would want to kind of walk you through before we share that data, but we're happy to share that as well. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and yay for long-term data.
Yes. Virginia?
Your next presentation is going to be Brandon talking about outreach, and he's going to run through the mapping stuff that we have. So
Awesome.
you'll get that.
Well, then I hit the segue on that one. Lauren, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we will go to our next presentation, Save Our Indian River Lagoon Communication Materials and Public Engagement with our very own Brandon.
All right, so, several of our last meetings, you guys had talked about education and some of the things, and I know, we have newer members that may not be aware of what we've done in the past, and so we just want to do sort of a rundown of, what we've accomplished as far as our education and communication outreach materials. So of course, we have the basis of our website, and just to give you some insights, when we first started the website, we were told we didn't have an ability to track who was on there. Well, we've since gotten that, and now we know who goes to our website, where they go, and just to give you an overview, the last year was about 22,000 page views, and they spend about almost 2.5 minutes on our pages.
Awesome.
Right. And just a rundown, the pages visited most. All right, our homepage is obviously going to rank high, and I combine that. There's two different ways they can get to our homepage, whether it's just the brevardfl.gov/Save Our Lagoon or Save Our Lagoon/home. The home is likely they're on another page and then navigate back to there. So it was split about half and half between those visits to those different sites. And then our project plan page, so people are going there, looking at our plan, seeing what's on there. And then Matt pulls up the next most popular page there with those septic upgrades. So a lot of people wanting to know about that information. And then our maps page gets visited quite a bit too, as well as our sewer projects page. So those are where we direct people to. The maps page is where we often direct them to go to see, what they're eligible for with our septic upgrades and other things. So, and then our COC information page as well.
Down at the bottom, which is awesome.
Yeah, you guys are still in that top area. So, yeah. After that, the other pages dropped significantly down into just 100 or maybe a couple hundred. Yeah, no commas in the other ones. So
3 digits.
Yep. So those are sort of those top pages. And I was going to give you a rundown of the maps page because there is a lot of information we've added to that maps page. So we have, to start with, our general program overview story map. And so it gives sort of infographics and general information about the Sorrel program and links to other resources there. Then we have our project plan page. So this is where people can go to see where all the projects are located. And it has other tabs as well for seeing the individual breakdowns. This is where they can go to find the amount of money they're eligible for the septic upgrade grants, or find out if they're in a septic to sewer project area. Things like that are all on our project plan page. We have our septic overlay map. So these are the areas that are required to have those advanced septic systems according to our ordinance. We have our algae bloom mapping as well, and there's a link on there that they can sign up for the algae newsletter. So if they want to know what's going on with the algae blooms, they can go there. We have our seagrass restoration tool that sort of gives us suitability and information on where might be good places to do seagrass restoration. We have our manatee field guide that was on there with thanks to the TDC grant we did the previous year, and we have now added on that recreation guide as well with the TDC grant we did this year. There's a baffle box map showing all the baffle boxes throughout the entire county. So if you want to know where all the city and county baffle boxes are, that's on there as well. We have our living shoreline guide that Jane Hart did back at the beginning of our program. That one's been on there quite a bit and sort of just talks about the different types of living shorelines that can be out there. And then we have the state's basin management action plans on there as well. So those are the many different story maps and data that people can find on our website. Now, if we get into our social media sites, our Facebook page, we're over 3,000 followers right now, and for the last 28 days, if we look at the insights, our posts have gone out to over 5,000 people, and about 700 people engaged with that. So whether that's liking the comment, sharing it, commenting on it, that's all in there. 253 reactions, 63 shares, 44 comments, and 29 link clicks. So we haven't posted anything too controversial to get some of those high comment numbers lately. Sometimes we'll get a post that, 120 comments just on picking up dog poop. And then the Instagram, you'll see we have our, last 90 days, so they report a little differently on the Instagram one, but it's 584 on there and 620 post engagements. Then our YouTube page, we have 165 subscribers on our YouTube page, and in just the last 90 days, we've had over 2,000 views of our videos, and with a watch time of 208 hours. And then The impressions, that's just the number of times it's been shown to people, so it's put out there in those little boxes and things you might see on the side, or, watch more videos, pops up in those areas, so 43,000 times it's been there, and 2.5% of those people who saw those went and clicked through and actually watched one of our videos. And those are unpaid ones.
Yeah.
Then we have our Lagoon Loyal program, so MTN helps to manage this program. So we have our website where people can sign on to become a Lagoon Loyal member. There's information for the general public on things they can do around their own home to reduce their pollution footprint. And we have 1,800 members who have signed up onto that, and as well as 97 businesses that have signed up to help support that program. So people who are signed up as members can report different actions that they do to help the Indian River Lagoon and reduce their pollution, their personal pollution. And when they do that, they earn points, which can be traded for discounts at those 97 businesses around the county. And since its inception, we've had 3,684 actions reported. So we've had a lot more people going to the page than necessarily are, signed up as members reporting actions. So it's 26,000 just since October of last year, total page views, and about 10,000 site users on there. And then in that last year, we had 177 new members sign up and reported 523 actions in the last year. And if you do go there, we do now have a map on that page, so you can actually see how that's broken down by the cities and the number of actions. So you can see which cities are most active in trying to at least report their actions for the lagoon. Then Lagoon Loyal also manages a separate Facebook page, and they have 1,700 followers there, and they have a very large post reach and post engagement. Their link clicks are a lot higher than ours, so we're a little higher in some of the other stats on our Facebook page, our Save Our Lagoon page, but their link clicks, they get a lot of people clicking through on their links. And some of those links go back to our stuff, so that's a great thing. They also do sponsor ads on Facebook and Google to try to drive traffic to the Lagoon Loyal site and get people to take actions like inspecting their septic tank or, never fertilizing in the buffer zone. So those go out on both Facebook and through Google ads. They manage an Instagram page as well with over 1,000 followers, and just in the last 90 days, they've had nearing 1,000 post reach and 112 engagements. We also created a fertilizer retail sign that we changed the ordinance to require this sign in all stores that sell fertilizer, and they have to put one up in all the various areas they sell fertilizer. So, while they might have one up in the fertilizer aisle, if they have an end cap in a different spot in the store or, temporary display, they're supposed to have a sign in those areas as well. So that gives the best management practices for fertilizer, tells people, how what time of year they can fertilize and what type of fertilizer to look for. There is a QR code on there that they can scan to see which fertilizers meet our fertilizer ordinance, and we get about an average of 9 scans a month on that QR code. So, and that's in 54 different stores around the county. We go in biannually and we will check to see that those signs are still up. If they need new signs, we will provide that. And since we've put these stickers on the back to say don't remove these signs, it's gone down a little bit in how many signs we've had to replace. So the first couple of years we were replacing about half the signs we put out there. So only a handful had to go out this last time. So. We also work with the stores to provide training materials. So we give them a little brochure holder that they can put in their employee areas to try to encourage the employees to learn more about fertilizer and how they can help talk to the consumer and advise them on the best fertilizer to purchase if they're getting some. And there's a training video as well associated with that. And so we've talked and asked the stores to include that in their employee training for their garden center employees. We also put out the fertilizer commercials, which every time I've shown these at different events, they enjoy them quite a bit. I've gotten a lot of compliments on them. So, and we put them through different areas. So they are put out on Facebook and YouTube, and also we'll be putting them out through Hulu coming up. So the last 3 months, our Facebook reach, about 75,000 people had that ad put in front of them somehow, and 639 of them actually clicked through on that when they saw that. And we're over 3,000 views on YouTube and 150 clicks on YouTube. And the clicks on YouTube is once they've watched the video, if they click on the links in that video, it takes them then to those Lagoon Loyal websites. So 150 people who watched those videos clicked through to learn more. Right. And the Facebook reach, that's actually combined with, so this is just the fertilizer compliance video numbers, except for the reach, that's combined with the buffer video. And just because of the way the ad campaigns go on Facebook, we can't separate out the difference between the two. And then the so the waterway buffer zone, that one has a number of clicks, 70, that combines 75,000. And then the YouTube views 10,000 on that one and 375 clicks through on there. Then our fertilizer ban video, that has our best viewing and reach so far. So that's 11,000 who have viewed it on YouTube and 508 have clicked through. And that's just the last 3 months on that. So we stagger these videos when we're advertising them and putting them in. So the fertilizer ban's running on now, and then the other two run outside of the fertilizer ban period. We also created a fertilizer pledge card this last year, and there were 2,000 of these printed up that go with us and with our stormwater department out to our various events. And so while we're out at an event, we can have, talk about the fertilizer restrictions and have people pledge to not fertilize during the summer months and to follow the type of fertilizer. So there's a little card they can fill out, they give back to us, and we can add them onto our email list. We also, at the beginning of this summer, printed out 5,000 bookmarks that went to 17 different libraries to sort of go with their summer reading program. So every time someone checked out a book at the library, they would slide one of these in one of those books and send them home with a fertilizer bookmark. And then we have a septic inspection flyer that we put out to realtors, title companies, and inspectors throughout the county. So the first year we printed up 5,000 of these, sent them out in packets to 33 different companies that said they would distribute them. And when we followed up with them this last year, there were 17 companies that said they needed more, and we put out another 1,400 to those various companies. So some of the other ones, it's not that they didn't want them, it's just they didn't run through the supply they had. And so they're encouraged to give those to any homeowners that have a septic tank or are looking to purchase a home with a septic tank. The septic maintenance magnet is one that 9 septic companies agreed to distribute to their customers when they go out to clean a septic tank. So it sort of gives them a little overview of what not to put down their septic systems. And at first, they only asked for about 420 of them, but they apparently really like them because when we approached them this year, they asked for 1,300 more. So we are putting those out there. And then the septic videos, which we'll watch in just a minute here. We'll get to those at the end of this presentation. But we have 4 different ones that will be also put out through Facebook, YouTube, and Hulu. And someone told me the other day they saw one of the Lagoon Loyal commercials on YouTube channel. They're like, oh, I just saw it come up my YouTube feed. So I'm still waiting for mine to show up. So besides the sorrel funds that are spent on getting the word out there, we also have our stormwater program that has dedicated funds and partners with us to help augment the Lagoon Loyal messaging, so reducing that personal pollution. And they do that through a variety of different methods and cover some of the topics we can't, like picking up your pet waste. So they have these best practices yard signs that they have started to implement and hand out to people at events, so they can put a sign in their yard saying, you know, I always pick up my dog poop, or, you know, I blow my grass clippings back into my yard. So things to sort of their neighbors to see and hopefully remind them that maybe they should do this too. They have bus wraps. We wrap the county vehicles, digital billboards throughout the county. They put ads at the movies in the park that happen. They also put in full-page ads in newspapers and periodicals throughout the county. And they have different handouts at events like bamboo straws, pencils, stickers, and temporary tattoos that are all Lagoon Loyal related.
Temporary tattoos?
Temporary tattoos.
How come we didn't bring any of the meetings? Let's
We'll get them for the next time.
Okay, please, bring those next month.
Yeah.
It's October, Halloween.
So a lot of these, the collateral things go out to the partners that are going out and doing a lot of the presentations, so we don't necessarily get them ourselves. That's funded through the stormwater funds. So
Dr. Windsor's been waiting to get a temporary tattoo. This might be the time, Dr. Windsor.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, he already has them. Why do you think he wears long sleeves?
You can test drive it, see if you want a permanent Lagoon Loyal tattoo.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with your request, we created some yard signs as well. So these are put out at any of the septic upgrades that are going on. So we have different septic installation companies that have agreed to put these up when they're installing a Lagoon-funded septic upgrade. And so we printed up 50 of those, and so far that's been enough to cover the demand and the frequency that they're out there installing things. And we also, as you may recall, have implemented into our contracts language saying that the different projects have to put in some sort of signage that recognizes the Save Our Lagoon program as one of the funding partners. So those should be going up at all the future projects from now on. And then our Lagoon Recreation and Manatee Guides. So we've printed up 70,000 of these brochures. They just started getting distributed about 2 weeks ago now. And so those are going out to the various, you know, hotels and other tourist areas in those rack guards that you see around those rack display stands.
Is there a digital copy of those brochures available?
We have the story map version, so the brochure itself would be a little difficult to read just in a PDF, a lot of scrolling. So we do have our story map that is on the website, so both the Manatee and the Lagoon Guide are on there. And then we have our signs, which Logan said he can pop up these beautiful signs. So we have one on our rec guide, and then the other one is our Manatee Guide. So those are the ones that'll be going into the various locations, and they are up at the front of the room. So the one on the left is the rec guide, and then the one on the right, that's one of the double-sided ones. So it has the rec guide on one side and the Manatee Guide on the other side. So we talked to the different cities and asked them what their preference was, and depending on the space they had to put them in, some are doing a double-sided sign, and then others are doing just single-sided. And we also try to get out and talk to the public, and we will do outreach tables at festivals and various events. So whether it's the Indian River Lagoon Day down at Front Street Park, we're typically there. The one on the right is Boaters Exchange, and they do a lagoon themed event where they bring in different speakers and things, and usually we're speaking and having a table at those events. And then we have other speaker engagements as well. So some of the straight talks with the Indian River Lagoon Coalition. We'll talk to homeowners groups. I was just speaking this month to the Suntree Country Club Environmental Committee, which is the committee that is pushing to try to get a little more friendly plantings and things around their stormwater ponds and ponds on the golf course. And so they were talking to me about that and ways that they can help enhance their stormwater retention areas, both for wildlife and for removing nutrients from the lagoon. So we have our additional outreach campaigns as well that you guys approved last year, and with the permission to bid is going to be going to the board shortly here for the grass clippings, excess irrigation, and stormwater BMP program. So once that goes out, then we can start the process to get those bids going.
All right. Great, thank you. Any questions for Brandon? Dr. Windsor?
Quick comment. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I have not seen any Lagoon Oil ads yet either, but I get a ton of Orca ads. And so I'm not sure what they're doing to get into my feed.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's okay. I don't mind. The other comment comes from Terry Casto, who's not here today, but he's texting me. He's my alternate for those folks who don't know on the committee. He wanted to know if you were tracking back on the original slide you showed on tracking for the government website here at the county. Are you tracking the time on page 2 as well as how many people were looking on the pages?
Yeah, so that was at 2.5 minute was the time on the page on average, but we do have a breakdown on each page.
Okay.
On, yeah, so we can get.
Yeah, I guess it's, how does that compare to other, sites? And I'm not sure how you can answer that very easily. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. Other than comparing it to just other county sites, we wouldn't have the information on that.
Okay, thanks.
That might be a good thing if you could ask county IT if they have by department an average amount of time. I know it's a stats package, or someone would have to look at it, but I think the county might want to know how much time people are spending, and that would allow them to at least compare in-house on how much time individual departments or pages have. I'll reach out to them, Brandon. Anyone else have any other questions? I had one, Brandon, on the additional, oh, go ahead, Bobby. Oh. Yeah. So the one question I had on the additional stormwater expenses like bus wraps and digital billboards, if it was possible to keep numbers on those too, like how many times the digital billboard was played, or how many buses were wrapped. I think because the most important thing for this data is trends. And so I think that is something that you want to look at over time, is how that changes. And so I understand that might be somebody else's control, but if we could ask them for a count, how many digital times, or how many times did the billboard play this month, or how many buses were wrapped. I think, again, historically, keeping track of that and looking at trends is going to be beneficial.
Yeah, and they do have all that data. I just didn't pull it together for this presentation.
Okay, cool. Well, it might be good for us to hold on to it in case they lose it, and then we have all the data in one place. But like Bobby, I still remember 6-7 years ago when we started this, and we were like, all right, we got to get education out. And you just went through a total package from digital to print. I think it's impressive on where we've gotten to. So great job. I think just like Lauren said, it's going to take, 22 years to get back to 2013 levels of grass. It might take 20 years for us to change behavior. I think that is a generational thing. And so this, in my opinion, was a great start. So thank you. Thank you very much. Kudos to the staff work.
All right. And so if there's no other questions on that, we can move on to see those great Septic public service announcement videos.
Sounds great.
So we'll let Logan run the first one.
Be septic smart. Inspect it. Every septic system needs regular inspections. to make sure all components are in working order. Catch a small problem before it gets big. Let's be clear. Protect your investment and save our lagoon. Learn more at lagoonloyal.org.
All right, we'll go on to the next one.
Be septic smart. Protect it. Locate your tank and drain field in your yard. Never plant trees near it. Never drive or park on it. Divert downspouts away from it. Let's be clear. Protect your investment and save our lagoon. Learn more at lagoonloyal.org. Be septic smart. Think at the sink. Avoid pouring down the drain chemicals, oil and gas, which can kill fish, grease, and coffee grounds, which clog your pipes. Let's be clear. Protect your investment and save our lagoon. Learn more at lagoonloyal.org. Be septic smart. Don't overload the commode. Only one kind of paper gets flushed. Toilet paper. Avoid flushing. Paper towels. Wipes. Diapers. Sanitary products. And don't share your medications with the fish. Let's be clear. Protect your investment and save our lagoon. Learn more at lagoonloyal.org.
All right, so these are all under 30 seconds so that they can be shown on pretty much any platform.
Dr. Winter?
Yeah, if I could, the two comments on not overloading your sink or not overloading the commode, those are applicable whether you're on a septic system or not. Those are exactly the same issues in big waste treatment systems, whether you're, so I hope people don't take from that it's okay to do it if you're not hooked up to septic. Thanks. They're great videos.
All right, any other questions, comments?
I was going to say, right to the point, short, great, and I love at the end when it goes, save our lagoon. I could just see that as a catchphrase. Little kids hears it on YouTube, and he's walking around the house repeating it, like, save our lagoon. I thought it was really good. They were good.
Well, I'm going to just chime in, and I'm speaking to the choir here, I know, but most people that have septic systems, they have no clue what makes it work, how it works, or even if it works, as long as they're not having an issue inside their house, out of sight, out of mind. So educating the people that have them is important.
I like how they're short and sweet. Like, are these being shared with the different groups on Facebook, the different social groups? Do we know? Because some of them I'm in, we get a lot of people moving here from places that have never even heard of a septic system. They don't even know they have it when they buy their house. And I see these comments, and some of them are like, I've had to have mine serviced twice this year. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, how are you twice a year you're having to have your tank pumped? How many parties are you having for dozens of people? Like, just curious if we know if they are being.
Yeah, so a lot of times I'll share things in different groups, some of the general, like larger Brevard-centric groups, and then some of the environmental groups as well. But if there's certain groups that you know about that we should be sharing these in, just let me know, and I can toss those out, into those and share in those groups when I can.
But these are brand new.
Yeah, so these just.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, they just got put up on our YouTube just a couple weeks ago, and will be going on our Facebook shortly, and then we'll be sharing them out, and then we'll have the paid Facebook ads, YouTube, and Hulu. Those will be going out on.
I guess we need to roll out the red carpet or do something to indicate, what's new.
Yeah.
Well, press release, if you guys, I don't know if you've written one, but once these do go out, doing a press release, and see if any of the, news stations or whatever would pick them up, because that's free advertising, free marketing.
Good idea.
Thanks, Kurt.
All right. there's no other comments, then we will move on to our final video, which is Dawn's My Lagoon Story video.
All right, get ready, everybody.
My wife and I moved down to the Brevard County area a few years ago from Northeast Florida, from the Jacksonville area. And I was particularly interested in working on the restoration of Lagoon. I had heard so much about it. I'd heard about the sorrel and the trust fund and all, and everything else that was going on with what the Brevard Zoo was doing with restoration of seagrasses. I was interested in getting involved, and so we moved down here, and it just started my journey. Well, one memory I have of the Indian River Lagoon is the studies that I did down on Sebastian Inlet Shoals. I started that study in about 2005. And we lost the seagrasses on the shoals between 2009 and 2011. It was a rapid loss that I thought would never occur. Seagrasses are the basis of a lot of the food web that occurs, so eventually we will lose, and we already have seen the losses of sport fish within the lagoon, the reductions of them. In order to get those back, along with the manatees and everything else, we need to get seagrasses back into the lagoon. Really, I think one of the most important things is understanding where your wastes go. I've been out boating and seen some of the small canals where grass clippings cover the canal. That's the source of the muck. The muck is from grass clippings and other things that are in the lagoon, but keep your grass clippings out of the lagoon. Put them back on the yard or collect them, either one. You know, be responsible. Many people own septic tanks and don't even know they own septic tanks. So know if you own a septic tank and treat it the way it should. You're responsible for that. You're responsible for that septic tank. If you are on a city system or a county system, know that you're on that and know where that sewage treatment plant is, because that's many of the things that we're doing with the sorrel funds is upgrading sewage treatment plants, septic to sewer. Those are really important projects. The biggest challenge is keeping people's interest in it over the long run. It took time to lose all the seagrasses. It's going to take a long time to get them back. It actually took probably more than 50 years for us to really get to the point where we are with the loss of the seagrasses. It's really due to urbanization around the lagoon and all that, and it has been increasing over time. People have to know that this is not a sprint, this is a marathon.
Very nice. Awesome. I love the crickets in the background, by the way. That was, sounds of the lagoon. It made me feel right at home. All right.
All right, and that's it for our videos this month. We'll have some new ones hopefully next month. We'll have Bobby's My Lagoon Story by then, and maybe a few others to show you.
Awesome. Just one thing, too, along with that, I wanted to thank Jenny Hansen and John Taylor at Orca. We worked on some of the Kilroy data graphs to try to make them a little bit more interesting and friendly to the public, because science isn't just for scientists. That's a little phrase I just created right there. Someone needs to trademark that. But really looking at being able to glance at a graph and not know anything about the data, but understanding what's going on. And so John Taylor from Orca, they're one of their IT guys who just got thrown into this, has done some really cool work on it. So, and Jenny, thank you for bringing me in on that. All right. So that is the end of our reports and special presentations. We have no old business nor new business this month. So what we'll do right now is do general public comments, and I have one card. Craig?
And it's still morning. Good job. First of all, I want to, I've harped on these folks here to get the educational component of this thing going. I am super impressed. You've done a tremendous job. I mean, from where we were 7 years ago, we're really getting there. So thank you very much for working on that hard. So I'm Craig Wallace with the Brevard Indian River Lagoon Coalition. So my purpose for being here today is to, if you would hand those around, is to talk about what we're hoping the legislature is going to pay attention to in the 24 session. So, but the significant thing about the process that we went through for this is the collaboration. And we are known as the coalition, and a lot of times we get referred to as, we represent a lot of the nonprofits. Well, one of the things we try to do is, from that perspective, is to try to bring groups together, try to get information sharing. And so the process we went through with this, we started with Virginia. She provided us with some inputs. We got from Dwayne DeFries of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, and then we started to talk to our environmental groups. And so I would like to report that this is a result of a significant collaboration between Marine Resources Council and the coalition. That has not been the case in the past. Going forward, we think this is a big step, and hopefully we'll continue with that collaborative process. So, so that's almost more important than what you see on the paper in front of you, but I will go through the list here. So the request to the 24 legislative is to get to continue the $100 million IRL protection program funding. That was promised to be at least for 4 years. Hopefully it will continue on before 4 years, but we want to at least get it for the second year. And then this is a big one. This is the KFC sewage treatment system, a new plant to move the treatment of sewage off of the Merritt Island onto the mainland. And this has been talked about for quite a while. And in addition to just getting the plant moved, is to actually include a component in that which would process the biosolids coming out of it so that we're no longer creating fertilizer that we dump on the agricultural fields to the west, and it comes back to the lagoon or into the river. So that's a big one that it will take many years to get that done, but we got to get going on it. Support plans for biosolid treatment to eliminate this unsustainable practice of land application of biosolids. This is the shortened version of that is let's not dump those biosolids out west. And I'm sorry, I'm running out of time here. Ratify state water management rules proposed in the 23 FDEP protection program. Increase water quality monitoring as recommended by the Blue-Green Algae Task Force. Allow counties to set seasonal fertilizer restriction ordinances. Some of you may know that that's under consideration to provide one that's statewide and not be allow individual counties to do their own thing. Maximum nitrogen phosphorus levels in reused water irrigation. We want to set a limit on that so that the ones that are putting too much nitrogen back as irrigation on the lands reduce that level. Funding of the Dwayne DeFries Conservation Hub at the proposed new aquarium. And that's my time.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig.
So thanks. And we will be proposing, Debbie Mayfield, Senator Mayfield has already seen this, and we'll be going around to the rest of the legislative delegation to talk about it. So
that's fantastic. Thank you for your collaboration. I love it when groups work together. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And then any other public comments? General public comments? Brett? Yes. Sure.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brett Bailey. If you could pass those out. I'm the president and CEO of Global Clean Diesel, which is a company that is working on gasoline and diesel emissions reduction. Our technology is very applicable to the actual combustion of algae. So Abigail has had shown me about the burn, and our system is actually apologize that where we go here. So, we're enabling an algae green crude oil, and which allows us to have sustainable electricity being generated around the world. The goal is to not only be pulling algae out of waterways, but also to be able to go through sewer sludge and be able to go through a thing called hydrothermal liquefaction. In addition, because of a lot of the dredging that's being done for the Indian River Lagoon, which, by the way, I live in Cocoa Beach, so I'm a local, lived over here for over 10 years, that all the dredging went down the canal that I lived on, and you're smelling the fumes. Our system could be applied to these dredges, and we could be literally showing the pounds of particulate matter that everyone is breathing during these dredging. So we're cleaning the water, but we're polluting the air, and we really should, in my view, be able to do both, clean the air and clean the water. Our system, it's very timely with the AECOM that we have their harvester. The goal, and Dan Levy, we had 2-hour discussion after the presentation that they're showing, being able to say his goal, his dream really is to be able to power the dredge itself. So if we can have it where we're taking out the diesel and all the fossil fuels that are being put into this to run this, and we can make it sustainable by actually running on the algae that we're collecting, then the system can be far more sustainable. We could have more than one unit. If you look at it, we have one, you could sit there and very easily see the owner and operating costs that are involved with the diesel fuel of running the system, 1 million gallons being put through it. I actually reviewed a paper that has shown that it is sustainable, that you can get nearly the same amount. Marine fuel is very similar to biofuel. The bio-oil coming from their Genefuel system is very similar. There's papers that have been written about it. So what we're looking to do is try to get marine fuel to show that it works. We're working with AECOM to be able to bring in biocrude that we could then run in our engine. What our system does, how it enables it, is that our technology is a system that runs, and I'll be quick here, and after this, if anyone's interested, we could go into more details. But basically, our system takes the particulate matter and runs we close the valve, pressurize the system, open another valve, and we reverse flush the unit. And by doing so, we enable catalysts that can handle the sulfur that's in the fuel, in the biocrude, and we can handle the large amounts of soot that's being generated. If you look at the cruise ships that are in the port, our technology, we're attempting to apply that to cruise ships and other vessels around.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
I have a question before you go. Is that contained in-house, like that's on unit, so it doesn't have to be outsourced and brought back? This is contained right in the barge?
Truly, the goal is to try to make it where everything is used right there in place. So you would harvest the algae, you would turn it into a biocrude oil on the barge, and then on site. And then the generator that you saw when you went on the tour would actually be then operated and ran on our biocrude. And then the emissions are then cleaned to the point where what goes into the exhaust, into the engine, is actually dirtier than what leaves the exhaust system. So
can this be 100% run on this biofuel, this
I'm working
marine
with AECOM right now. They're very interested in our technology and teaming potentially with us. So we're in that initial phase. But the goal would be, in other HTL things, they have shown that the energy you get out of the waste product that's coming in, whether, they were using animal fat, that could actually be sustainable where it could actually completely run on it. Our technology, I'm not going to suggest that is possible. We may have to add either biodiesel or regular diesel, not only for the combustion itself with higher engine speeds, but also just to be able to do it.
But it would reduce the amount of diesel needed, and it would be self-contained on site,
Yes.
so it wouldn't have to involve the outsourcing.
Yes. The transportation of the algae, and then what you do with the algae you could have an algae bloom in a sense, even on whatever the barge is that's moving in over. There's the stink. I've worked with a Cocoa Beach wastewater treatment facility, and they were trying to dry out the sewage sludge before they moved it to the landfill in Cocoa, which, by the way, is terrible. We're taking all those nutrients, putting it in there, creating the leachate, which then has to come back. So I'm trying to, but their problem it was all the smell that came along with it. So I'm working with them to say we could put an engine in there and with our after treatment, be able to remove the ammonia, which is basically the DEF fluid that you see on the roads there for trucks. So we eliminate the smell, clean the air. And so we're working to actually retrofit all of India as well, and once again, what goes in is actually dirtier than what comes out.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
And we do have some pictures from that AECom event. So those who didn't make it out to the Harvester on Wednesday. So Florida Today has had a nice little pictorial overview, so we're just borrowing theirs. I mean, we took some of our own, but they had a nice little rundown. So we had 73 people at the event that came out to see what was going on, took some trips out to the barge.
That was the guy that drank the water.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. He said he was cleaning it.
Yeah, so he was sort of showing the process they use to separate out the algae.
Is he still alive?
He is.
Progress.
I like that.
Yeah,
look at
that was
one
Virginia's
there.
favorite.
They got my good side, thank God.
And here's everyone heading out to the pontoons to go out to the barge. All right, so just a little pictorial of.
For those who don't know anything about this project at all, that this might be the first they've heard of it, can you give a little 60-second what it is and what it does?
Yeah, so the algae harvester is basically skimming the surface of the water at the surface to bring in algae-filled water. Then they are able to use some flocculants and things to separate out the algae, and they can then put the water back in and collect that algae. Currently, the algae that they will collect here will be going to the landfill at the moment, but in freshwater areas where they've done this before, they've been able to turn it into things like fertilizer, fuel, whatever, different purposes for it. Even they had a lot of some plastic, or not plastic, but like a foam type
Flip-flops.
material. Yeah, flip-flops.
Yeah.
So yeah, they
Algae
said
flip-flops.
a lot of the tennis shoe industry in that are using some of this algae in their shoe manufacturing. So there's different purposes. But like I said, it's been done in fresh water before, so they do have a little bit of a challenge with the salt water and to see how they can repurpose the salt-laden algae.
And that was the big difference, is the salt. This was a DEP state innovation grant.
Yep.
To see if they could find a way to do it with salt, with brackish water.
Yeah, so
Because
we're
as
not
Brandon said, they do it all over the world with fresh water. Brackish water was the new challenge.
Yeah, so this isn't being funded through the half-cent sales tax, though we are helping to manage and organize it. But it's an innovative grant from FDEP.
So there was a few concerns that were in conversation while we were out there. Are those specs going to be followed up so we can get information as it becomes available, just in regard to the output and the content of what's in that outflow? And then also any organisms that are being harvested in the water column where the algae is, what those are, and how those may be affected long-term from the harvest. And we discussed, most of those organisms are probably compromised anyway, but there are some beneficial organisms that live in that algae. Overall, even though I have questions and, look forward to more information, it was a fabulous project. Everyone out there was extremely well-versed in being able to discuss how this is an immediate fix for a bloom and how quickly they can get to a site and collect in an hour's time the majority, or if not all of those blooms before it spreads and grows. So overall, I think the project is fabulous, and we should definitely continue to see how it goes moving forward. But thank you for hosting also, by the way.
Yeah, so the idea is, combined with our algae monitoring data that we get, we can potentially target some of those hot spots and hit blooms as they're forming and potentially take them out before they get large.
Virginia, with the grant, is there deliverables? Is there an end report I mean, just naturally, that's something that that's going to be produced anyways, that we could see that
Yes.
wouldn't take additional time?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a date or a time that
It's
final report?
5 months of field work, and yeah, there's definitely a schedule in the grant with the May 2024 final report.
Okay, so then maybe if you guys could look to bring something back, the month or two after that, just with the final report, so we could all see, Kimberly, if that kind of gives us
Absolutely.
that follow-up that we're looking for.
Definitely. And will it be in that same site running consistently all through that entire 5 months, or how does that look?
Do you want to come up? There's multiple sites, and then we're also, watching to see where the blooms are to. Go ahead.
Yeah, so for the grant requirement, they have to run for 5 weeks total, but they have 5 months to do that. So they'll be monitoring for where the more higher bloom activity is located and then relocate. So I believe the location right now, they're going to pretty much wrap that up this week. And then Trevor from AECOM was mentioning that they're going to do recon next week, get some more readings throughout the lagoon in addition to the FWC HAB reports and our satellite imagery to determine the next location.
Also, I want to mention, because I do like this project, there's also different sizes, different components of this that it can be utilized in different areas. It doesn't have to be the large barge in the deep water of the lagoon. There are many options for side sites along the waterways where it's not actually floating. So I just think that developmental science in this and their proved success in the areas they're already working across the country is excellent. So definitely one to watch, in my opinion, for sure.
Yeah, I'll just, for folks that weren't here a couple years ago, we had partnered through an innovative technology grant to test a very similar technology that was going to be a land-based, smaller system demonstration project placed at the Merritt Island Airport, treating the waters there in Newfound Harbor, coming down Sykes Creek. And unfortunately, the day before they were supposed to mobilize the equipment here, the firm went bankrupt. And so, then we started over. And so we're really excited to have AECOM here successfully. Innovative technology, it's just really, really challenging to get from the test tube, the lab scale, to meso scale, to, demonstration scale. And it takes, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of funding to make it happen.
Definitely. Two quick more things. Aesthetically, they can also house this in a way that's less obtrusive to the eye, where some of the components can be under the water. So it's not going to be something that, as it moves around, someone who may have a concern about how this looks from their lanai or back patio, there are preparations for that. And then also, of course, we still are working to address the cause of the algal blooms, the algae that's out there, the HABs that happen. This isn't in replacement of preventing them and working to stop them. This is just to help mitigate the ones that are already in process and going to continue to develop before we can do that. So as an anti-fertilizer person, I definitely want to put that out there as well, that there is the opportunity to continue to work to prevent them. But great project. Thanks again.
All right, yeah, definitely a tool as opposed to a fix. This is a tool in our tool belt. All right.
An arrow in your quiver.
Yeah, there you go, an arrow in your quiver. I like that one, although I don't know how good a shot I am. All right. So what we'll do now is we'll go into final comments. And there was a letter in our agenda packet that was written by our one and only Dr. Windsor. So I will go ahead, turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you. Several times in the past, I brought up this issue of succession planning. And I go back to my days at the university where we talked about succession planning. We'd do it for a month or two, and then we'd forget about it for whenever. And so I feel like I'm in that mode again. But we're facing a hard deadline a little over a year from now, a year and a half from now, where 7 members of the board will go out at the same time if we do nothing else. At least 7. Maybe somebody else will decide, besides the 7, they want to leave too. So I've been thinking about ways of trying to make sure that we don't put an undue burden on the staff, and some of the concerns I expressed in this memo that I copied everybody on were things about trying to recruit 7 people all at the same time, train them all. Maybe it's easiest for staff to get 7 at one time, train them all and get it over with. It's like tearing the Band-Aid off. But I'm thinking that there must be some other ways, and what I would like to do is schedule an agenda item to discuss this in more detail, because I don't want any decisions made in a sudden fashion during a board comment section at the end of the meeting and then get criticized for not doing the right thing. And so this is going to be out in public for at least a month, maybe 2 months, before we finally get to resolving this issue about what we do. And so what I did is I do what we do in faculty meetings, is I threw spitballs against the wall, and I said, well, I'd like to throw this. I don't think there's much of a chance of this, but I thought I'd throw it out for people to think about, and then maybe they'll do their own spitballing at home, because we can't get together down at the coffee house or the bar or whatever and hash this out in reasonable fashion. We have to do this in public and not share any ideas with each other ahead of time. So I put this memo together, and some of the things I was thinking about that we should be doing or might consider. One is do nothing, hit the end wall, 7 go out at the same time, and it's somebody else's problem. I'd rather not do that. We could recommend to COC members who wish to continue service, maybe they want to be reappointed for a year. And so some of the folks who are going to go out at 7, instead of 7, they'd go, after 8 years, they would get 1 more year of service. But that would be in violation of the policy. It's violating our bylaws. They would be violating the county commission policies. I don't think that's much of a chance. But I want you to think about it. I'd like to, what started me thinking about all this is it takes so much time to recruit people to replace board members, and typically we don't replace them until after somebody's submitted a resignation letter. And so I thought, I mean, does staff actually have the ability to go out and advertise for replacements now, even though people have not put in a letter of resignation? So I think they probably don't have that permission. They probably can't do that until they get a formal notice of resignation from us. So I'd like them to advertise early and then consider, the mentoring options I described in the memo of either the board member, the current COC member would resign from the board and let the new appointee take over, but mentor them for that time period, or do it in the reverse, where the new appointee gets to be mentored for some period of time, probably during our next planned development, which would be occurring next year sometime. Another thing I thought about, well, maybe we should have, because I'm concerned about, what did we do way back when? And we've relied on that a lot during our discussions about what we did back in the first year and the second year and the third year. And I went back and I put all those things together of the summaries of board meetings. We've got all the links to the old board meetings now so that people can go back and see things. Having a little institutional knowledge is really valuable. And Virginia and Brandon have a lot of institutional knowledge, but they're the only ones who do, I think, that had the whole story together. And, and I hate to think about things like where somebody decides to leave, for one reason or another. But I think about things like that. So having an ex-board member as a ex officio member, somebody appointed to the COC, non-voting, nothing that would violate any rules or regulations, no sunshine concerns, that sort of thing. But that person would be committing to coming to our meetings and serving, or that person or two, as ex officio members, just to be there, sitting over there someplace, in case a question comes up, okay? And again, I have others listed in the memo. One that I thought about since I put the memo together and gave it to staff last week, because they have to have it for a week before, the meeting, starting the retirement process early. Like, for example, what's to prevent me today? I mean, nothing's preventing me from resigning and telling Virginia, I'd like you to find my replacement. Can she actually, if I say I'm going to resign, let's say after the development of this work plan, which would be February, March timeframe, somewhere in there, if I resign in February, can she start recruiting for my replacement now, even though I'm not officially resigned yet. That would be another way to try and stagger retire. And so instead of the board members all going out, I mean, I keep calling them the board members, instead of the COC members all going out at once, we stagger them going out. Those are some of the things I thought about, and I'm very concerned about representation on the board, the community representation, the areas of expertise that we have. And although it says areas of expertise, they're the stakeholder groups that put this plan together initially. And so we let the science group, the technology group, the Lagoon advocacy group, the tourism group, the education group, the finance group, and the real estate group. I know you all know that, but I'm repeating that now for anybody who may be out there listening and not heard this stuff before. Let them start recruiting people that they would like to see on this board. And so all of that, I was bubbling through my head for the last month, and so actually longer than that. But I thought, what's the best way to do this? I wanted to do it in a board comment, because if you're not interested in pursuing this discussion any further, then I won't waste county staff's time anymore with anything with this. But I think that I would like to have a legal opinion on some of this stuff. I'd like to flesh out a few more of the details, but I can do that for, to some point in the future. But if you guys would like to have a board discussion on this, then I think it would be appropriate to have a motion that, says we'd like staff to schedule this on a future agenda. You can pick what agenda you want, and then, giving the public sufficient notice that we're going to be discussing this and what the topic's going to be and the background information on this. And that's what I'd like to see happen today, is get a motion to get it on the agenda.
Okay. But, and we'll take discussion. I want to add one thing for clarification that I should have added last month, is the process. So just for those at home that don't remember or know the process, applications go in, and then the county commissioners select 7 from those applications, and the League of Cities select 7. So we have no control in the selection.
We
and I just wanted to make sure that that's understood. We have no control over who gets selected. It's the county commissioners that do 7, and then the League of Cities does the other 7. So with that, now I'll take, and let me add one thing, and then I'll take, I looked at the ordinance for application time. There is nothing in the ordinance that says applications must be taken a month after resignation or 2 months before resignation. So if we do look to have that discussion further, that would be one option that I saw where we wouldn't have to do much work on it. But I'll go, any comments? Anyone? Yes, Don.
I'm in my first year, and I can tell you the learning curve is huge.
Yeah.
And I would welcome somebody sticking around and giving me advice. I mean, Vinny, I've really depended on him to get the nuts and bolts of this, how this works. And so, yeah, I would definitely want somebody to stick around that, as you guys, some of you guys have been around along the whole period. So
7 people.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's really important to get that knowledge.
Yes, Stephanie.
I would go ahead and move that we put this, ask staff to put it on the agenda.
I would second that motion.
Okay. Any other discussion? Kurt?
I think Don brings up a good point, because having been involved with this from the inception, before you guys even showed up, to me, this is just second knowledge, second nature. And I don't think of it as somebody that just walks in cold, that this is all brand new. So I think it's a great idea, John. Super.
Well, I don't know if you remember when I was volunteering Todd that he was going to be chair, we actually asked Bobby and Barbara, like, you guys want to be chair? And they were both like, I think we're kind of new with this. So I think. First meeting. Yeah, first meeting, man. Come on. But that's the same thing that would happen to at least 2 members would be voting members, brand new on that first day, having to take votes. Stephanie?
It's actually 5. There are 5 regular members that are facing this. 5 regular members. So when you say 7, it makes it sound like only half. No, the reality is that 5 of the voting members have been here for for that time period. That's really huge.
Right, worst case, it would be 5. I was hoping maybe Don would want to take my spot, so at least he'd have a couple of years. I mean, that the county commissioner and League of Cities would appoint him, and then, but you're right, worst case would be 5 brand-new votes on an item. So it sounds like there's a motion on the floor and a second to have this come to a further agenda, to have open conversation, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and anybody think about anything they want to add, you know, it's important, but you can't send it to me. You have to wait till the next meeting, or send, I guess you can send it to, yeah.
Yes, Virginia, of course, yes.
I just want to, so the way the process has worked previously is when terms are coming up for renewal, I start about 5 months in advance and take all the existing, I ask who wants to be considered for a term renewal. And so I know from that, you know, who wants to be renewed and who wants to resign. Take that information to the county commission and to the League of Cities and ask, you know, do you want to renew the terms of these people who want to be renewed, or do you want staff to advertise those vacancies to see, you know, what the recruitment pool is? And so then that process starts 4 or 5 months in advance, so that by the time the current terms end in February, there are new people ready to step in. So there, like you said, there's nothing that says when that process needs to start or has to start or how late we have to wait, but it actually takes 4 to 5 months to get that information, take it to the board, take it to the League of Cities, find out what they want advertised, advertise, leave it open for a month so people have time to hear about it, fill in the application, submit, then get those applications to the League of Cities for their review, then take their recommendation, their selections, and the other seats to the board and get their decision. One time the board sent some stuff back to the League of Cities, and so it's a lengthy process. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of what it takes currently to get those positions filled.
What is the date that that's going to occur, that you?
February 2024 would be
24?
the end of the 8 years for 7 of us.
It's 25.
25.
February
Oh,
25.
I'm sorry, 2025, thank you.
Okay, so there is one more selection phase.
We'll have this
before
project
that.
plan,
Okay.
and then there'll be one more project plan. So 2 left. All right. So we'll go ahead and vote on that motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Do you need to ask for?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. Windsor. Is there any public comment on the motion?
I want to make sure the public gets it.
Yes, no, thank you very much. Okay, not seeing any, we'll go ahead and vote on that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right.
And could I ask a follow-up? If a future agenda item was the suggestion?
Was the motion, yeah.
Yeah, is the next month the likely place, or would it be some, I wasn't sure how busy the next month's agenda was going to be.
That might be good to preview too, Virginia, our next coming months, because I know we're getting near the end of our projects. Will be submitted.
Right, projects will be coming in November, so October would be the best time to.
Okay, good. Thank
And
you.
then November we're looking over projects, and then December will be the project plan. Just to remind all those at home who I know are going to be so excited as we move forward. All right, so motion passed, so we can look to have that discussion next month. Great. Thank you, Dr. Windsor.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else have anything for the good of the order? Charles?
Yeah, just a quick plug. On October 27th, the Merritt Island Wildlife Association is going to have their annual dinner and meeting. And last year we had 2 wonderful speakers. Vinny was being one of them, and Terry the other. This year we're going to have Clay Henderson. And Clay Henderson, former head of Florida Audubon, published a book about a year ago on forces of nature, which are conservation leaders in Florida, and it includes a section on Brevard County as we were home to the Alan and Helen Cruikshank. So we'll have a flyer out. I'll try to distribute next meeting if that's okay. But you might want, and it's going to be at the Veterans Center in Merritt Island, so a little more centrally located. 5:30, Friday, October 27th. Thank you.
All right. It's a fantastic event. Are you guys going to have the sales like you had
yeah,
before
we're doing
too?
the auction.
There's some really cool arts and crafts stuff there built around the lagoon. So that's or the auction. So that's cool to go to on top of everything else. All right. Yeah. Yes, Kurt.
Kimberly brought up the question earlier about tourist development tax. So I knew it had gone up, but I didn't know how much, so I went to the source. I texted Peter Cranis, and he said as of the end of July, we're up 12.5%.
Awesome.
Is that a quarterly number? Is that a monthly number? Is that,
That's for the 6 months.
For
That's
6 months.
Or whatever their, I don't know when their
That's-
fiscal year is, but as of the end of July, their fiscal year is up 12.5%.
thank you.
And I don't know how many of you had seen the article in the Florida Today this past week regarding the University of Miami doing a blue-green algae study. You may want to look that up. I volunteered for it. It's pretty interesting. I haven't dived into all of what they're looking for, but it's totally voluntary. It's only three studies per year. They want you to do water samples of like the Indian River Lagoon, and whether you do them or not, it's totally voluntary. But they also want to know about you yourself, and you can do nasal swabs and even do blood work if you want. And so they'll keep track of all these different things and where these people live. And when I talked to them, it was pretty interesting. So I thought I'd bring that up to you guys as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Citizen scientist. All right. Bobby, do you have something?
Since I asked after the meeting last month who to contact about outreaching for the tourism stuff, since, you know, I'm the member, Brandon got me in contact with Angela for the Space Coast Office of Tourism, and I met with her last week, actually. And that went very well, and super excited, and very pleased that they had someone that wanted to reach out to them and start sharing and coordinating what they want to do and what they're seeing, and maybe some of what we got going on. And then she suggested I needed to go see the new visitor center. So I did, and I met with Ellie, who's Elsie, that's running that, and she was super excited as well, and I did see the brochures.
Cool.
So they were very clearly out there. Yep, amongst everything else. So, yeah, I just figured I should put that out for everybody, let you know. So, and then I'll be working with her, contacting her some more later on.
Awesome. All right, thank you. All right, with that, does that need you? Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting over. Thank you very much. We will adjourn.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.